Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we're going to be back painting more of the cab of the Frankenholler. Alright guys, well before we get into it today, I just wanted to take a quick second out to thank this week's video sponsor, which is FlexiSpot with their C7 ergonomic chair. So what you guys don't see on camera is every week I'm spending so many hours editing these videos, and for a long time I've really struggled to find a comfortable chair. So the old kit chair is getting a little bit tatty, and to be honest, it's never really been that comfortable. I've often found I had to stick cushions down the back to try and sort of give myself some lumbar support, and that is where this is, I think, going to be a game changer. So where this C7 chair is different is the sheer amount of adjustment available. So the first thing you notice when you get into the chair is it has this lumbar support. So the lumbar support you can adjust up and down as you please, but also in and out as you need with all of the ranges of adjustment. The armrests are fully adjustable, so you can adjust them up and down to what you would like, and they also go twist and rotate side to side, as well as sliding forwards and backwards. It does the same thing that every office chair in the world does, is it will adjust up and down to your height. The base of the seat can move forwards and backwards. The headrest has 45 degrees of movement backwards and forwards, but also up and down. The other part is you can relax in the chair. It can go from 90 degrees to 128 degrees, just lying it down, and you can lock it in position. So this is adjustable and good from people who are 5'0" up to 6'9" and 140 kilos. So if you're interested in one of these FlexiSpot C7 chairs, head down to a link in the description and use my code C750 to get $50 off. Help out the guys that help out the channel. All right guys, let's get back into it. All right guys, welcome back. And if you're watching, last week I spent a whole bunch of time putting the PDM into the Ferrari. If you missed that, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and like always, do those things. Comment and like the videos. It all does help out that crazy algorithm and keeps the channel flowing. I've had a lot of people asking me about the Mo Unit Blue. So that was the motorcycle PDM that I was using originally in the car just to power the lights and stuff. And I've mentioned a few times that it's not a good unit for cars. I found this in hindsight, and lots of people were planning on using it because it's much cheaper than the automotive PDMs, but it's not really suitable. And basically the issues is it is set up for a motorbike. So one of the main things, its default setting is that when you put the indicators on, it needs one activation to put the indicators on and then another one to turn it off, which is extremely frustrating. Same with the headlights. You have to turn them on and turn them off because that's sort of how the motorbike switches work in a lot of these cases. It also doesn't have the output for the headlights. It's designed for one headlight, not for multiple headlights. So you still need to set up a relay after that because it doesn't have the output by itself. Now I have kept it. In this case, I have branched together the high beams and the regular headlights together. So basically, I'm just using it as a smaller relay. So I've used them all of those inputs or outputs for just the regular low beam headlights, and then I'm using the Link PDM for the high beam headlights and other higher output things. So the Link PDM is definitely going to be much better for this job. The Mo unit is not built for purpose, and as I said, you can find settings where the indicators work and things like that, but then as soon as you disconnect the battery, so I've got my battery cutoff switch, and start up again, then you have to recalibrate it again, go through all the settings and try and reprogram it again. It's not built for purpose, and it's not the right thing. So that's where we're going to leave that for now, and we want to get back into the Frankenhauler. I haven't touched this for a couple of weeks, and now I've got to try and unmask it, which is not the ideal way to do it. So with the Frankenhauler, a couple of weeks ago, you saw me go through, clean up the entire bottom of the cab. I went through and put on POR, or paint over rust, which is sort of the perfect product for this stuff. It is super hard wearing, super durable. As I mentioned, it can't even get it off your fingers. Always wear gloves with POR. It's not like any other paint. I tried everything to get it off. So now this is done. Ideally, when you're painting, you want to unmask before it is fully cured. You want it to be mostly cured, and you want it to be set up reasonably well, but not fully cured like this. The issue that you sometimes have is that when you try and unmask, you can peel up the paint. Now there is also a method to unmasking. So in this case, it's not going to be too bad, but generally when you're unmasking, it's better you don't peel straight up against the grain, because sometimes you can lift up the paint and peel it off. What I generally try and do is peel away from the painted edge and pull something like this, and it won't lift up an edge of the paint and pull it off. And now if you prep the surface properly, it shouldn't do that, but sometimes it can just grab the paint and lift it up, and that's a way to prevent it. So let's unmask this now, and then we can start having a look at what we're going to do next.
So without further ado, we get stuck into unmasking, and it's all looking really good. I'm quite happy with the result of the bottom of the cab, so we can move forward.
All right, well, I've been sort of trying to get my head around how I want to move forward with this and start painting the inside and the rest of the cab. I think the best way to do it is, while it's actually still on its back, I'm going to do the roof and inside of the dash. So the upside down part inside the dash is much easier to get to while it's lying on its back. So I'm going to clean that all up now, and we're going to concentrate on doing those bits first, and then we can move on to the rest.
So I get stuck in and start sanding the inside of the roof and just tidying up and getting it ready to do my rust conversion. And I noticed a couple of bits that I wanted to panel beat out, and that ended up making a little bit of oil canning, and so I was backwards and forwards just doing some light panel beating here until I was happy it wasn't going to oil can anymore. And then there was a couple of little pinholes I discovered, and I thought quickly just try and use the MIG to fill them in.
It's one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of the MIG. There were a couple of pinholes in the back lip of the roof, and I thought I'll just try and tack them in with the MIG, and I used the backing plate, and it still just blew holes through it. So I'm gonna have to flip the cab up and repair those before we go any further.
So it's moving the cab and putting it back onto its dolly so I can wheel it around, get it a little bit closer to the TIG. Because the TIG is currently stationary, I should put it on a trolley, but at the moment it has a limited range of movement. So it's time to prepare it properly, and I cut out a rectangle so I can make up a patch to fit in the hole. Get it so that it has a perfect fit, and then I can start TIGging it back in. I really like the TIG for this stuff. The trouble with the MIG is that it, even on the lowest setting, it blasts through, particularly on this very thin old metal. The TIG is much more delicate, and I really like it for these patches. So it's a little bit more time consuming, but much better. And you can see here that I have made a nice little patch that fits in quite nicely, and then I just finish TIGging it in and clean it all up. So for cleaning back the welds, I much prefer a flat disc on the grinder over the sanding disc on the die grinder. It just it lasts so much longer. I think it's much better value for money and time. Then you can see here I've gone back and I'm doing the second patch, making a nice perfect little patch, checking it, and going back and just filling up any of the pinholes. And with the patches done, I just put on a little bit of etch primer.
All right, well, that took a little bit longer than I thought, but I went through with a torch through from the back and just double checked everywhere to see if I had any gaps in my welding, any pinholes left, and finally, we are looking good. There are just a couple of extra repairs here, obviously, than I expected. Let's get it onto the back of the cab again, and then we can start cleaning up and preparing that roof for paint.
So with the patches done, I moved the cab back to where it was before. Thankfully, it is really light, so it's very easy to do. Then I go through here and start cleaning everything up, getting rid of all the dust, etc. off of these panels before I start attacking it with the rust converter. So basically this is an acid that will convert any of the surface rust to a neutral state, so it makes it black so that it doesn't spread. I leave that for about 15 minutes or so, and then I go back with some water. I put a little bit of bicarb soda in the water just to neutralize the acid and wipe it all clean, to make sure I get rid of all of that acid off of the panels. And once I've done that, I go over and blow the panel dry and make sure that all the water moisture's gone, and then do a quick wax and grease remover again to make sure it's nice and clean. And then I can start hitting it with the POR 15. So this stuff, as I mentioned, is you definitely need gloves. It does not come off your skin. It lasts weeks. It's not like any other normal paint. I've tried everything to get it off, and yeah, make sure you wear gloves with this stuff, but it is good stuff.
All right, well, we have the inside of the roof. It's all painted and it's dried up now, even in this freezing cold weather we've had lately. And up underneath the dash is done as well, so that part is done. What I did notice though while I was down here is on this forward headlining area, there are still a few pinholes that I was too lazy to fix earlier, which I have to fix now, because eventually that's got to get some paint on it and not be full of holes. So let's go through and do some more welding touch-ups.
So I probably should have done this when I had the cab moved over before, but I've moved the cab over again. I go through and grind off the paint so that I have a nice surface to weld onto, and then go through and start touching it up and just fill up all of these little pinholes so that I have a nice solid surface before I get it ready to paint. And again with the flat disc to grind down the welds. Move the cab back into the booth yet again, and this time I can put it back upright.
All right, the cab is back upright again, and now we've got to start tidying up the back, the floor, and the footwells of the cab. Now, this part is going to stay exposed and is going to be painted a color. Same with the door jambs, this top headliner, and just the frame around the rear window. Everything else is going to be just painted black, because it's going to be all covered with sound deadening and whatever linings I work out to cover it with. I still don't exactly know what I'm doing yet, but we'll work that out later. So now it's time to do the messy job of giving this another good thorough clean, scuff back, and paint process to do the POR 15 in here.
Alright, so there's lots of repetition in this episode, but basically the process is exactly the same. Is go around and clean up everything, make sure I get rid of any of the sort of flaky, dusty paint, clean it all off, then I can get in and start hitting it with my rust converter. And the rust converter, you can see here I'm putting on, I use a piece of red Scotch-Brite to wipe the rust converter on. It just helps key up the surface a little bit more while I do that. Then again, back through, clean it all off with the slightly alkaline water that I'm using, and then blow it all clean and get it ready for paint.
All right, so I didn't thoroughly think through my order of operations here. Basically, I've cleaned up the floor and underneath the dash and the back wall. I've gone through and acid treated the surface rust that's there, so that's I've converted all that. That's all done. But if I paint all this now in the POR 15, I can't do anything else on this cab until it's dry. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to switch now and start preparing this dash. So basically the dash and the door jambs and all that sort of stuff, I need to go through now and start sanding it back and getting it ready for some body filler, so I can go over the whole thing, do any body filling, do any final adjustments before I get that ready to paint as well, and then I can sort of do both at once. So let's do that.
So now it's time to tackle the dash and the door jambs, etc. And this area needs to be prepped a little bit better than everything else because this is going to be seen. So I really need to make sure I get rid of any of the surface blemishes on these areas. And then it's also same again on the firewall because that is also going to be painted and seen. And once I've gone through and rust treated all of that front end, it's time to start doing some of the body filler for the inside of the cab. Body filler is definitely one of these things where less is more. Definitely take your time and try and lay it on as sparingly as possible, but still enough to do the job, because it's a real balance between having to sand for hours and not having enough and having to do multiple coats. So by now it's later in the day and it's time to start getting the interior ready to paint. Cleaning up all of the interior so I can start attacking it with my POR 15 and covering all of these surfaces. Again, it's the end of the day, so I can leave it overnight to set up. And we're back. This is the following morning. The interior has had time to set up, so now I can go through and finishing up the bits that are going to be seen and do another layer of the body filler.
All right, so you've seen that I have painted the hidden bits of the inside. They're all black, as you can see. I've prepared the firewall, the door jambs, the dash, and those bits. That's what I'm going to hit now with some primer, because those are all going to be painted. Because the inside of this car is going to be beautiful. The outside is going to stay patina with some touches, so that can be done later. But for now, what I need to do is start masking everything up so that I can give it a good coat of primer over everything, and then we can just get it ready for the colours that are going to go on it.
And now we start masking, and masking is one of these jobs that's often underestimated how long it actually takes. It's extremely time consuming and labour intensive to mask up the body of a vehicle. When I first started painting cars, the general method used in panel shops that I was in was using paper for pretty much everything, but this newer method now of basically just taping around the edges and then laying some plastic over the top speeds up the process quite a lot. You do need to be cautious that you have a good seal all the way around, because obviously you don't want overspray, but as you can see here, I'm using a combination of the plastic and paper just because of the intricacies of this particular cab. But eventually it's all masked up, and then I can go around with my wax and grease remover and make sure everything is nice and crispy and clean, ready for the primer. And what I'm using here is the Unicolor HS primer. So this is a high solid or high fill primer that I'm mixing up 4:1. It's good stuff. I've used it quite a lot in the past, and you spray it on quite thick so that it does fill up a lot of the area, but obviously you're going to go through and sand back a lot of the excess afterwards. I do love this step because it is so nice getting a nice solid colour over these patchwork that you have up until this stage.
Alright, so I've gone around now and I've got some high build primer on all of the firewall and the interior bits that are going to be painted. So that's door jambs and the dash and the rear window surround. So that's all looking really good. I am very, very happy. I'm really happy with the progress this week. I've got all of the cab inside, and at least the main parts of the cab under paint, except for the external bits, which are patina, which I'm going to do things to, but that will be in a later episode. But that's looking really good. So I'm gonna have to let the high fill primer set and go through, and then I might be some little touch-ups and things like that now that it's all one consistent color. It's always easier to see once you've got it that solid color. It doesn't have to be perfect, because again, this truck is going to be patina on the outside, and the inside is going to be very neat and tidy, but it is going to be matte on the inside, so a matte finish. So matte does hide more of the imperfections, but yeah, we'll get it there and get some paint on it next time. But that is everything for this week. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, during World War II, Henry Ford's son, Edsel Ford, was the president of the Ford Motor Company and had been since 1919. However, his father still pulled the strings. Sadly, Edsel Ford developed stomach cancer in 1943, and he died of complications at only 49 years of age. Henry Ford then decided to resume control of the company at 78 years of age. However, he was suffering from heart problems, and many questioned his mental state. In fact, the Roosevelt administration formed a contingency plan to nationalize Ford if need be, so they wouldn't lose vital military production. By the end of the war, the company was in dire straits, losing $9 million a month. Henry Ford's wife and daughter-in-law intervened. They threatened to sell off all of their shares, which amounted to over half of the company's shares in total, if control of the company wasn't turned over to his grandson, Henry Ford II. So Hank the Juice had the monumental task of turning the company around at only 28 years of age. So sadly, Henry Ford Sr. died only 18 months later from a brain hemorrhage. His funeral was held at St. Paul's Cathedral, and there were 600 people in attendance inside the cathedral, and outside, standing in the rain, were 20,000 people.
Well, I actually felt like I made good progress this week, which is rare for me. But all of the surfaces of the cab that are going to be painted solidly are painted. And that's a big step, because usually this stuff takes a long time. But again, because I'm not going for, pristine, highest level perfection everywhere, it makes it a lot easier. So we'll get it looking pretty good. There's still some touch-ups to do, but hopefully next time we can actually get the colour on there, and you can see what I'm going to be doing on the interior and firewall, etc.
Great. I can't wait to see it. It's going to look amazing.
I think it's going to be good.
Yeah. Okay, just the usual. Like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think. And of course, Patreon, if you want to help him out with his crazy builds, support this madness.
Yes.
And see the videos daily for no ads.
All right. And thank you very much for all your well wishes and stuff last week. It was much appreciated.
Yeah.
So back into the scheme of things. Let's go.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
See you guys.
everyone. But his father still pulled the strings. Sadly, Edsel Ford developed stomach cancer, not salad cancer. In fact, the Roosevelt Emergency Administration Contingency Fund.
What?
I don't know. I just like keep going because it was funny. Okay. In fact, the Roosevelt administration formed a contingency plan at 78. I think I said hemorrhage right. No. Stop.
He wasn't 78.
Stop. If I say stop, I know. I don't need you to mansplain. Stop mansplaining to me.